Unmute.
I think we're good to go, Chairman Malloy.
Okay. I was just, I sent a note to Anthony that the other board members' mics are off, but I see now they're back on, so we're ready to go. I will call the March 3rd, 2021 regular board meeting of the Pleasant Valley Rec and Park District to order. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Anthony.
All right.
First item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Anthony.
Oh, let me get the flag up here. I apologize for the delay. Hang on just a moment. Okay. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the
and
republic
to the republic
for which
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for
and
all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we're all back. As we all know, we're on Zoom this month. Last month we were on WebEx, and Zoom works a little different than WebEx. Hope it'll work better. So let's start with calling the roll. Karen.
Director Magner,
Present.
Director Kelly,
Here.
Director Drasfeld,
Here.
Director Roberts,
Here.
Chairman Malloy.
Here. Thank you. And I heard everyone loud and clear. Amendments to the agenda. Mary, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
There are, no, not at this time.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, Director Magner moved and Director Dransfeld seconded. Karen, please call the roll.
Director Magner,
Aye.
Director Dransfeld,
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Roberts,
Aye.
Chairman Malloy.
Aye. Item 5, public comment. In accordance with Government Code Section 54954.3, the board reserves this time to hear from the public. If you would like to make comments about a matter within the board's subject matter jurisdiction, but not specifically on this agenda, in accordance with California law, the board will listen, note the comments, and may bring the comments back up at a later date as an agendized item for discussion. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board. And I'm sure that you've seen on the agenda the details of how the Zoom thing works. But basically how it works is Anthony will call up the speakers and they'll get their 3 minutes. And as 3 minutes hit, the microphone gets shut off and we move on to the next speaker.
And at this time, I don't see any attendees with hands up. Oh, I do see one. So we have one individual. So BNICOS is what it's showing up as. And that is the only one so far.
Okay. Let's hear them.
Hello, my name is Dan Johnston. Sorry, I couldn't change my screen name in this version of Zoom. Hopefully everybody can hear me. What I'd like to comment on is the condition still of Pleasant Valley Field. Prior to the adoption of the current agreement on landscape use, it was brought to the attention of the board that they had rutted the field and done significant damage to the field. We've seen no improvements in that since I think it's over 2 months now. Seems like it's being put on a wait and hold. At that point during the meeting, it was, hey, we can bring this back for a review. And I haven't seen that follow-up come through where they're actually making the repairs to the physical damage to the field that they have done. And that's frustrating at this time, considering how much money now has been approved for the contract. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dan. Bob, would you care to address that? Or would you please address that?
Yes. They have airified it, opened it up, they've rolled it, they've put top dressing over it again. There might be minor spots still out there, but nothing major. They put ample enough time and money on it.
Is it a matter of a little more time it's going to take for what they put in to grow through?
Yeah, it's winter right now. Bermuda grass takes longer to grow. All grass does in winter, but like I said, they've worked on it. It's in great shape. It's not that bad. There's a few areas here and there, I will say, but overall, the place looks very well.
Okay. Anthony, do we have any other hands raised?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, consent agenda. All right, would anybody like to pull A, B, C, or D from the consent agenda?
A, please pull A.
Okay. Director Dransfeld requests we pull A. Any others? Okay, let's have a motion. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda items B, C, and D.
So move to approve consent agenda B, C, and D.
I'll second.
Okay. Karen, please call the roll.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Director Magner,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Dransfeld,
Yes.
Chairman Malloy.
Yes. Okay, discussion of item A, Director Dransfeld.
Yes. As we received the email from Dr. Martinez Bravo, just to address the email, I wanted to update the special board meeting minutes per her request. Part of it being of Ventura County to of Camarillo, since she is a Camarillo resident. And then I would recommend that we add the last paragraph fully of her statement so that her message is not construed. And this is, I'm trying to find the exact paragraph, but that is, let's see here. It's of no surprise that a lack of transparency and equitable practices is an issue for PVRPD. Director Kelly commented publicly on Facebook that Judge Consuelo Marshall, a Latina judge by affirmative action, is not really a judge. She should be ignored. Mr. Kelly does not seem aware of the impact of this racist comment. This is problematic as our country is facing a reckoning of the impact of systematic racism. And she also did email afterward to correct herself on the judge being of that she is Black, not Latina.
Okay. Well, the errors of fact certainly should be corrected. That she's a Camarillo resident and the race issue. But our meeting minutes generally do not include personal comments made towards anyone, including the directors. It's not really a part of the business of the district. Her other issues that were in the letter are in the minutes, and that's appropriate. So it's my opinion that the correction to the other two items are fine, but adding this mention of what Director Kelly may or may have not posted on her Facebook is not not appropriate to be a part of meeting minutes. That's just my opinion. Anybody else want to comment?
I agree with you, Chair Malloy, that needs to be left out, but we do need to correct the other two things.
I would just like to comment. I tried to call this lady a couple of times, but her phone is always, her phone bank is always full, and you can't get through to her. So I did reach out to her. I do not know why she hasn't reached out to me. I've never talked to her. I don't know her. She doesn't know me. But I will make the offer again. She would like to have a one-on-one and talk about whatever complaints she has. Be glad to talk to her about them.
I bring
Okay,
this up because of just for her request. I was not aware that was the usual practice for recording of the minutes.
Yeah. Well, when you're here a while, you'll get your turn. And we've all heard some really inappropriate things directed towards staff members and board members, and they get to say it. They get 3 minutes to say whatever their opinion is about whatever it is they're interested in, but we don't tend to memorialize that stuff in the minutes, and I think Karen did what we usually do regarding this, and our minutes are in fact much more detailed than most meeting minutes. You'll find most meeting minutes that put a minimum of information in. And I think Karen creates a very rich recording of what we do. Sometimes I don't like it because sometimes, I don't like how it came out, but, I think she does a really good job of annotating what the meeting went. So if you'd like to make a motion to one effect or the other, we can vote on it.
I'll make the motion to make the 2 corrections regarding her residence and her SSS. I can't even speak tonight. I apologize.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Can we have just one more discussion now that we have the motion on the table? I had a question with regards to if a member of the public requests that something be memorialized in the minutes, is that something that we need to abide by?
I don't know where you come from, but where I come from, the way we do things is the way we do things, and we don't allow any citizen to just say, do things this way. It's not very workable. I think we need to do things in a way that the 5 of us agree is the most productive way to move forward. So, I understand that's what her goal is, and she's accomplishing it here as we discuss this. And I think that's very unfortunate, but I don't think it's a part of the meeting minutes, nor is it appropriate to make it a part of the meeting minutes. We're not punching bags to be swung at freely and have that recorded as if it was district business.
Yeah, I was just asking to the specific point. Us being new and all of that. I was just asking for basically clarification on that issue. If someone requests it, I don't know all the procedures like you guys do. You guys have been here a long time, so I just that was just clarification on that point. Really wasn't speaking to the content of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, Karen, please call the roll.
Director Magner,
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Dransfeld,
Aye.
Director Roberts.
Aye.
Chairman Malloy.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, on to item 7A, consideration and approval of the fiscal year 2019-20 annual financial report as prepared by Moss Levy Hartzheim LLP CPAs. Leo.
I'm up.
You are up.
Okay, this evening I'm bringing before you the fiscal year 1920 financials. I have Travis Hull, our auditor. He is on the Zoom meeting as well. So every year the district conducts a financial audit to ensure that the effective operations of the district are being followed. It makes sure that for our accountability, our ethical and professional practices, our effective risk management, the quality of our output, and it supports the decision-making and performance tracking that the board and the staff make together. The audit, again, is for fiscal year 2019-2020. It was performed by Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim. The auditor in charge was Travis Hull. And the pre-work was done in May of 2020 with a wrap-up in October of 2020. The audit reflects, again, the financial statement at year end of June 30th, 2020. It shows the financial position of the district, and it confirms that the district is operating within the guidelines of GAAP, also known as generally accepted accounting principles. This year, our audit was clean and is unmodified. The primary economic factors, which I'm highlighting on the major key points of our audit, was our property tax revenue for fiscal year 1920. It increased by 4.5%. And our biggest challenge for in our expenses is the CalPERS unfunded liability. As you can see by this slide, it went up 8.7% in just one fiscal year. The district-wide analysis is our total revenue for 2020 was 11,300,000. That went up. Our expenditures were 10,500,000. That too went up, with a net change for fiscal year 2020 of 783,000. Our fund balance did improve for the end of the fiscal year to 11,700,000. Our revenues for the fiscal year in the general fund was 8.6 million. The assessment district was 1.1. Our Quimby was 1.4, with total general fund of 11,300,000. Our expenditures, general fund was 8 million. The assessment was 1 million. Quimby was 1 million, 1.2 million, with a total of 10.5 million. On the bottom row on this, you can see that our revenue exceeds our expenditures in all of three funds. So that is the goal. On June 30th, you want your revenue to exceed your funds, or your revenue to exceed your expenses. This is a snapshot of our cash investments and where we stood on June 30th. We have money in a local agency investment fund, also known as LAIF, the Ventura County Pool Investment Fund. We also use a combination of LAIF and CalTrust, MBS, which, if you recall, we just recently cashed in those 2 CDs. And then we have our daily operations, which is held at Pacific Western Bank, and our money markets, which is held at Pacific Western Bank. We have 2 types of debt right now. We have the COP, Certificate of Participation, which is the PV Fields loan. That'll be paid off in 2045. We still owe over 12 million on it. And then, as you can see, the last column shows what our payment was for that debt of 752,000. The pension obligation will be paid off in 2022. We still owe 612,000. And then the payment that we made during the fiscal year was 250,000. Our assets, this slide will depict the financial health of the district. Our assets exceeded the liabilities by 31.1 million. It increased by 569,000 from fiscal year 18-19. Our unrestricted net position, which is the summary of the general fund, the assessment district, and Quimby, is 1.1 million. And even though our balance sheet requires us to show the pension obligation and the unfunded liability, we're still showing in a positive, that we're moving forward in a positive way. This is just an informative item. There is no fiscal impact, and I do have Travis on the line if you have any questions regarding the financials that were attached in your board packet.
Okay, thank you, Leo. Questions from the board or comments?
Yeah, Leo, you said our biggest liability is the pension. Is that correct?
The unfunded liability for PERS, yes.
Okay, and that was the 5 million approximately?
Yes, let me find that slide for you.
Is that assessed differently than the 12.6 million we have for the certificates of participation?
They are. The CalPERS is an unfunded liability that's handled through CalPERS, and that's based on those 3 PERS plans that we have, the tiers. The 12 million that for the COP, that is a loan. And Travis might be able to shed a little bit more light onto it for the differences in how they're handled.
Yeah. Good evening. Yeah, Leo, you explained those pretty well. Yeah, they're not related. Yeah. So I mean, the COP, you have an amortization schedule. So if you're ever curious of future years payments, you can nail them down for the rest of the life of the loan. The liability for the net pension, it's a little harder to nail down changes in that, just because there's a lot of different factors that go into that. And actuaries do a report every year, which gives us those numbers. And, it has 5 or 6 different important factors. Recently, unfortunately, that number has been going up each year. But yeah, as far as what the district can do to lower that liability, all the district can do is make the mandatory required payments each year. And, that's not necessarily going to lower the unfunded liability. But kind of what we've talked about when I've come to these meetings the last couple of years is, just kind of plan when you're doing multi-year budgets, for the required payments to go up a little bit each year.
Yeah, actually, later in the evening, I'm going to give a presentation on the CalPERS situation, and we're going to cover all those payments during that time.
Chair Malloy, I think the important thing to know is that the COP is going to go down. And as you're going to talk about in your presentation, I'm sure, is that the CalPERS unfunded is not going to go down. So we do pay off one of the tiers, I believe, on an annual basis, but the big one will keep going because we still have people on board, and we have people are living longer. And if you understand how the actuaries work, why it's not going to get better for a long, long time. So, am I right, Travis?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I covered that in the presentation as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Jordan, did you get all your questions asked?
I don't know. I might have some more, but if anyone else wants to go ahead with them.
Okay. Anybody else?
I have no questions.
Okay. Director Kelly?
I don't. Looking forward to your presentation.
Director Dransfeld?
Questions.
Okay. And Anthony, do we have any callers in on this item? Any public commenters that want to comment on this item?
Nope, none, seeing none.
No. Okay. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the annual financial report for fiscal year 2019-20 as prepared by Moss Levy Hartzman LLP.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Karen, please calls the roll. Karen, are you hearing me?
I'm going to check on Karen, please. Thank you.
I believe she may just be muted, so.
Yeah.
Jessica's going to go check her, make sure everything's working.
Okay,
She's
good.
muted.
You good
It
now?
might help if you unshare your screen too.
Okay,
Leo.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
That's right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, great. Could you please call a roll on the motion for item 7A?
Okay. Director Magner,
Aye.
Director Roberts,
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Director Dransfeld,
Aye.
Chairman Malloy.
Aye. Okay, motion carries 5-0. 7B, consideration for
Thank you,
setting
Travis.
dates of budget workshops. Yes, thank you, Travis. See you next year.
Chairman Malloy, members of the board, tonight I'm going to bring before you our budget workshop dates. These are dates that we try to plan out ahead of time so that we have everybody have ample notice so that everybody can plan their calendars so they can attend. The purpose of the budget workshop is to allow the board to see the preliminary budget that the staff has put together and to give them an opportunity to put their input in so that we are ready for the July 7th, 2021 adoption of the budget. During the budget season, the board of directors meet in the months of April and/or May to discuss the development of the budget. And again, the workshops assist the staff and the board in being aligned in the same direction for the upcoming fiscal year. And this workshop is led by the staff. I'm proposing that we, instead of having multiple Wednesday nights, which we've done in the past, is that we do one Saturday where administration, recreation, and parks all present their budgets along with the assessment district. And that is to be held on Saturday, April 24th at 8 a.m. in the community center. And we're asking that it be an in-person meeting. With that, we would take any recommendations or changes that the board wishes. We would bring those back to the board on Wednesday, May 12th at 5 p.m. in the community center. Again, we're asking that meeting be in person. So I'm asking if those dates and times will work for all 5 of you. If you have any conflicts.
What is the termination time of the Saturday meeting?
Last year it went really, really smooth, and but this year we have COVID. So we're starting by 8. I would hope by like 1 o'clock we would be.
Okay, so it's not all day.
No, that's not the intent.
Okay.
The intent is if we could wrap it up in 2 to 3 hours, that would be great. But I personally am budgeting for 6 hours.
Okay. No, I just wanted to know if we needed an extra day because, you know, doing an 8-hour deal is
Correct.
quite long.
Correct.
I
Any
believe,
other questions?
I believe I confirmed on both of those dates. I can't pull up my calendar, so I think I talked with Jessica and I'm good for both of those dates.
She just notified me that you did contact her and you are good.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think I'm okay.
Works for me.
Also
Okay.
works for me.
Works for me, or it wouldn't be on the screen, so. So let's go ahead and we don't need to formalize that.
Okay, we'll move forward and with those dates then, and make sure you all have your invites to so those days are on your calendar.
Okay. Thank you, Leo.
Mhm.
Item 7C, unemployment analysis.
Chair Malloy, do we need to motion and approve that or no?
Information only.
Yeah, it said information on one page, but on the second page, I see it says suggested action. Why don't we have a motion?
Yeah, it was agendized.
Formalized it. Yeah. So do I have a motion to approve April 24th and May 12th as the dates?
Motion to approve, Jordan.
I'll second.
Okay.
Come here.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
I don't know what
Karen, please call a roll.
Director Roberts,
happened.
Aye.
Director Dronsfeld,
Aye.
Director Magner,
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Chairman Malloy.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, now we're on to 7C, unemployment analysis.
Okay, Chairman Malloy, this is my third and final presentation for this evening, members of the board. Staff was asked to, during the mid-year budget adjustments, to take a look more closely at the unemployment expense to see if there was a way that we could come down with a closer figure since our budget is so tight, because we had asked for a $50,000 budget adjustment. We had only budgeted $3,400 for the fiscal year. Being optimistic that COVID was going to be short-lived, that it would be over by the fall. And as we all know, that did not happen. COVID hit us hard. We had to do furloughs, decrease hours, which those affected our expenses. And we had to increase our unemployment. So with that, in December of 2019, reports of a flu-like virus was starting to surface through the news. In March of 2020, There were various declarations and executive orders declared by the World Health Organization, former President Trump, Governor Newsom, and the Ventura County Public Health. On March 20th of 2020, the directors of PVRPD decided to close the programs and facilities due to COVID-19. The closures resulted in part-time hours for reduction in part-time hours for recreation staff, 6 weeks of furlough for our customer service representatives and our recreation specialists. In January 2021, the district was able to bring back a small number of lifeguards and swim instructors to conduct swim lessons, as we then learned that swim lessons were deemed essential to prevent drowning. At the time that the employees were notified that they were going to be furloughed or have their hours reduced, HR was able to locate a template on the EDD website that we were hoping would help us to calculate what the employee would be getting while they're on unemployment. We later learned that our calculation of what their check was going to be was much higher than what EDD actually sent the employee. We made numerous attempts to contact EDD to find out why there was such a variance. We could not get through via phone. So we were not able to find out why that variance was occurring. We did find out, though, that they have extended unemployment benefits, and this slide depicts that. So through the EDD, a person would get 26 weeks. It then can be extended by the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, also known as PUA, for 11 additional weeks. If the person is still unemployed, there's another extension that they can qualify for, which is the Federal State Extended Duration, known as FedEd, and that extends their program for 20 weeks. So in essence, someone that's been laid off or furloughed, they would have up to 57 weeks of unemployment. During this COVID-19, the Department of Treasury established a Coronavirus Relief and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act. The CARES Act pays 50% of the weekly unemployment benefit between March 13th of 2020 and March 13th of 2021. The PUA, the pandemic, the second level of unemployment, that benefits are paid by the federal government. And then the FedEd is paid by PVRPD if an employee gets to that next threshold for being unemployed. Being that PVRPD does not contribute to the state unemployment insurance plan, we are what we would call self-funded. We get billed every quarter for whatever the EDD pays out on our behalf to people that are unemployed that worked for us. The challenges that we found in calculating the unemployment benefit was we were unaware if a former employee had secured work elsewhere. It was unknown the number of weeks the former employee had been receiving unemployment, which level they were at. Were they at the EDD, the PUA, or the FedEd? And proving the EDD template calculates a larger benefit than the employee actually received was a challenge. And that, again, because we could not get through to the volume of calls that EDD was getting on a daily basis. So this slide shows you what we have been billed as a district, what the CARES Act has paid. And if you look at the very far column, I have actual and estimate. So for the first quarter, or the first 3 months of fiscal year 1920, if you see March through June, that would cover if an employee went out on March 1st or March 13th. This would cover weeks 1 through 14. This is an actual number here. The district was billed $17,956. You can see that we didn't get the bill until August 6th. The CARES Act paid over $8,900 for it. Therefore, the district's responsibility was $8,900. That comes into the 50% that the CARES Act is covering. Now, jumping down to fiscal year 2021, July through September covers the weeks. If the employee had started again back on March 13th, it would be weeks 15 through 27. we got a bill for $19,000 in November. The CARES Act covered $9,500. The district's responsibility was $9,500. We just recently got the billing from EDD for the October through December period. Again, that would be covering weeks 28 through 40. As you can see, those people, quite a few of those people that had been unemployed were able to go back to work because our responsibility of the amount billed was $13,000. CARES Act covered $6,700. The district covered $6,700. Now, the periods of January through March, as well as April through June, those are estimates. So I went high with the 19,112, not knowing if the people that had been, fortunate enough to find jobs were still employed or not. I'd rather have gone high than low. So as you can see, the CARES Act expired on March 13th. So this is a prorated amount in CARES Act and the district's responsibility between 7,900 and 11,000. Then we go April through June, and we are April through June, keeping in mind that the CARES Act, that the weeks covered were prorated. It does not carry out clear to June 30th. So we estimated that that bill would come in at 6,300. The CARES Act would cover nothing of that invoice. The district responsibility would be 6,300. Keeping in mind, those are two estimates. Those are subject to change, and we won't know for a few more months as far as what the January through March invoice is going to look like. So that I brought this before the Finance Committee, and they wanted me to bring this before the full board so that you would all have an understanding of how the 50,000 came to be and how these different levels of unemployment are. You have the EDD, the PUA, and the Fed Ed. The $50,000 budget adjustment was made in February 4th, and that'll be reflected in next month's financials. When you see the February financials, that those budget adjustments will be reflected at that time. So this was an informative presentation. Do you have any questions for me? That yes, Director Magner.
Leo, in the December a statement that we got and the other statement that we got, the statement we got in February and the statement we got in November, there was nothing in arrears there. There
was no mention of arrears. Everything was billed in full.
Okay, so there was nothing in the December that was actually expended back in July to September.
No, there was not.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Very good information, Leo.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One question that I have, and this is just more so that I can gain knowledge on it. Would it make sense for us to move to SUI at some point, or is it more beneficial and cost saving for us to stay at self-funded?
Right. The way the district was doing it when I came on board in 2014, we didn't have unemployment. So it would not at that time been beneficial because we would have been paying 1 or 2% of our payroll every, to EDD. I have worked for organizations that go ahead and pay that. But having the pandemic, it would have benefited us to have been part of the SUI, but hindsight's 2020. I can't say how long this is going to last. If you would like me to do some research on SUI on exactly what it cost, I'm going by my old days when I worked for a municipality that it was about 1 or 2%. It might have gone up since then to see if it would benefit us. It's just something that once you start, I don't believe you can get out of. So I don't think you can go back and forth.
Got it.
So.
Isn't there money that also comes out of the employee's paycheck?
Not for, from my knowledge, not for state unemployment. No, it's a benefit paid by the employer.
Okay.
Yeah, having been through this budget a bunch of times, it's very unusual for us to have someone on unemployment. We have quite a screening process before we hire people, and we hardly ever lay anybody off. I mean, this is the last time we laid people off was the first round of ERAF back in the 90s. I mean, but it's only in a fiscal emergency do we lay people off. So it's really unusual. It's really unusual for us to have any significant amount of unemployment insurance costs. So that's why we've gone solo, because it just pencils out for us.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Okay, nice work as always, Leo. I can't imagine how difficult it is working with EDD when I realize we hear these stories of there's 1 million people waiting to have their claims processed. It's pretty awful. So we've got it, and we've got it more than adequately budgeted. I'm sure you've done your numbers really conservatively, so we're good.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay. Somebody have a question? Okay, I thought I heard somebody speak. All right, so on to item 8, informational items, and item A is me. I get to lead off. A little light on the meetings last month. We had our regular meeting on February 2nd or February 4th. We had a BCSDA meeting, which most of us here attended on the 2nd. We had Finance Committee on February 17th, and the district is doing well. As we all went over in detail with the mid-year adjustments. And then the Policy Committee meeting scheduled for February 25th was canceled. A couple informational items. As you all know, water is roughly 10% of our budget, and the Sierra Nevada snowpack that supplies about 1/3 of California's water is at 61% of historical average based on tests they took yesterday, indicating that we may be in for another severe drought. The state's 2 largest reservoirs are drier than usual. Lake Shasta, which is a federal reservoir, has 68% of normal, and Oroville has only 55%. And as winter draws to a close without significant storms on the horizon, we could be facing the first water restrictions in 5 years. That's coming from the state. As of this morning, Camarillo was at 22% of normal rainfall. I don't believe we got anything measurable today, although it does look like we have some chance for a little measurable next week. The temporary dog park at Freedom Park seems to be very well used by those that were traditionally using Springville, which is undergoing renovations to the turf and getting a new shade structure installed. There's no conflict with the use of the temporary park and the adjacent baseball field, which is about to see children on it for the first time in a long time. And because there are a lot of people there for park use, such as the two radio control car tracks, and there'll be children playing baseball, I hope that the dog owners are diligent about keeping their dogs on the leash between the car and the park. I know at Springville that's kind of slack on that, but it's a short trip, and it's a lot more chance for problems at the temporary park. But it looks like it's doing well. The staff made it slightly bigger than last time, and I think it's serving the job well. And they've got the rolls of turf out there at Springville, and are going to really make that park look good and be ready to take so much more use. Okay, on to the second item, Ventura County Special District Association and California Special District Association. Director Magner.
We are going to have a Ventura County Special District special meeting, I believe next week, next Tuesday, because we need to have an election. So apparently we have at least one candidate that has stepped up. And now we will also have a second position that needs to be filled because Rod Brown will be moving out of state. So that will be another one. I don't know if they have a candidate for that. So that's all I have there. And that will be a special meeting. The California special districts, as always this time of the year, we've got a lot of legislative things going on, a lot of reading that you'll notice I'm back to the glasses again. So it's doing a lot of reading. I am meeting with Kara Ralston and State Senator Lamone on Friday, which should be an interesting meeting. I have never met the lady, even though she's from our area, so I'll give you a full report on that. CSDA has been really busy working with the coalition throughout the month. As you know, that the two special district measures have been introduced, HR 535 and Senate Bill 91 for the Special Districts Provide Essential Services Act. I'm sorry to say that special districts were not included in the bill that was passed by the House last week. They tried to get this put on there, but it didn't make it. So they're moving forward with these two bills. At the current time, we have 357 supporting organizations. I believe 15, upwards, close to 15 of the organizations are nationwide organizations. We also have the remaining organizations, I should say, are from 40 different states. So we have good support. So we're hoping that that comes to pass, that we can get that on there. So they'll get that passed so that we can get a portion of that money. But as you know, they keep talking about counties, cities, and tribes. And that seems to be the where the money is going to go. So that's it for that. I've got several committees that are meeting, but the biggest thing is the legislative committee will be on Friday, and we've got a whole day session on that. So I will give a report on that at the other time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Magner. Ventura County Consolidated Oversight Board, there was no meeting since our last meeting, so Mike Mishar has no report for us. Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, Director Dransfeld.
I had my first meeting on February 22nd. It took place via Zoom. I took oath, and a few of the main topics that were covered were regarding monarchs. In August 2014, there was an endangered species request made, and it's been reviewed, and it's seen as a candidate species at this time and will be annually reviewed. It's not higher on the priority list right now due to current conservation efforts that have been taken into consideration. And across the United States, there is a higher population than what's present in California. They recommended to, keep conservation efforts moving ahead, and they recommended working with current public landscaping and to not include tropical milkweed. And it's interesting because going back to our programs for HCF, this is a topic that's actually covered with native plants, and it's a really good way for people to learn about what is helpful in your garden and what can be detrimental. So whenever that comes up, if anyone's interested in learning more. And they have a new website. It's their first updated website in 17 years. I did not know a website could go that long without being updated. But there were some problems that arose out of this because there were concerns about compliance of old documents. They weren't ADA accessible in the PDF format. So as a result, those documents had to get pulled off of the website. So they're looking into it further as it's a result of AB 434 about web content accessibility guidelines 2.0. And as an unintended consequence, there's 22,000 pages that had to have been removed. And in order to get them back up, they would have to be converted, which would cost $100 per page, as cited by the state. In our next meeting on March 15th, one of the big topics we'll be talking about is the LA River Master Plan. To learn more information about that, it's very extensive. The website is larivermasterplan.org. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Lots of stuff going on there. Okay, standing committees. Looks like the first one on the docket is finance. So let me share my screen here. And bingo. I'm kind of watching the TV to make sure that it catches up with all the stuff. So we're up to speed here. Okay, so each year CalPERS updates their annual financial report, and just a couple months ago they released the 2018-2019 report, and it's a several hundred-page document. And includes information on both the Public Employees Retirement Fund, the Legislators Fund, and the Judges Fund. They all have separate plans. The CalPERS Retirement Plan serves over 2 million state and local government employees and retirees. And the information in this presentation has a really significant impact on the district's future. So CalPERS retirement, CalPERS has two sides of the building. There's the healthcare, which many of us are involved in, our employees are covered by, and then there's a retirement side. And defined benefit retirement plans are pretty simple. Employers and employees contribute money into the fund. The money is invested, and over time it grows to help pay for the member benefits when they retire. And the general mix of the money that goes out the door is investment earnings are expected to produce 55 cents on the dollar. The employers contribute 32 cents, and the CalPERS members have a payroll deduction, and they contribute about 13 cents out of every dollar paid out. Now, that works great when the investment earnings are adequate. But when they aren't, as they have been for the last few years, the employers get billed with the additional contributions. And the discussion of that is really, what we're here to talk about tonight. The assets that they invest are mixed in a series of different mixtures. And basically, if you look at the public equity, 53%, and the private equity, 6%. It's basically 6% ownership of businesses by holding public stock or private holdings. And then not quite a third of it is fixed income. And then 11% of it is real estate. So it's a mix, with the idea of the mix being to protect the very large fund from short-term market drops and to protect the assets of the employees. The target investment return that all of the numbers of CalPERS retirement is built on is currently 7%. So when they don't do 7%, they're definitely going to fall behind. And when they do over 7%, that's a good thing, and they're supposed to be ahead. Unfortunately, as you'll see, that doesn't always work that way. But as you can see, even with a relatively conservative investment strategy, the returns vary, very substantially from year to year. So here's the magic chart, which is to me the most important part of the whole CalPERS annual report. And unfortunately, and as you can see, it's this. I'm just doing the PERF, the Public Employees Retirement Fund. That's the relevant data here.
Okay, hold on.
This report is only accurate up through June 30th, 2019. So this data here is 20 months old. Fortunately, they reported some of the newer data, and I'll cover that in the next slide. But basically, I want to kind of go over with you what the last 10 years looks like. And the left column is the years, as you can see that we have, from 2010 to 2019. And the next column over is the actuarial value of the assets. That's, how much they're holding. And you look in the purple box, it says 257,070. Now these numbers are in millions. So, or excuse me, yeah, they're in millions. So that's actually $257 billion $70, which is the actuarial value of the assets 10 years ago. And then at the same time, the amount of liability they'd accrued, that is all the benefits the employees had earned by going to work and getting a paycheck and earning their percentages, was 308 billion. So 10 years ago, we were 51 billion behind. So CalPERS being behind is not news. It's not an overnight problem. It's a long-term problem. Unfortunately, the problem is accelerating. If you look at inside the green box, I've highlighted the last 3 years of assets, and they are going up. And those amounts are going up are not insignificant. As of 19, they had $372 billion worth of assets. But unfortunately, the liabilities for all those years worked, they're going up much faster. And the next column over is a subtraction between the green column and the blue column, and you can see how deep the hole is. So at the end of 17, the hole was 139 billion, and the end of 19, it's up to 158 billion. And if you represent the size of that hole to the value of the assets, you get the funding percentage. Basically, how much of the money that you need you actually have. And if you look down at the bottom there for the funded ratio back in 2010, they were at 83%, and it's been a steady slide downwards ever since. And now we're sort of plateaued at 70%. The more nervous making thing is, to me, is this next column, which is the annual covered payroll. So this is the amount of money that's being paid out to all the employees. So it gives you a good sort of sense of how much money is actually being earned versus how big the hole is. So the money being earned is going up very slow. It's only $56 billion. So the last column, they actually take that and they represent it as a percentage of the unfunded. And as you can see, the payroll now needs to like triple. The annual payroll needs to triple to cover the unfunded liability. It's just getting relatively bigger and bigger. So even though these numbers over here in the red column are flat at 70%, the reality is that the hole in the ground is actually getting a lot bigger. And 70% is really the wrong number to look at. The right number is that the money in the fund, the actual value of the assets, needs to be 43% bigger in order to be fully funded. We're not 30% short. We need 43% more. It's a lot bigger number and a lot bigger problem. So here's the data that they published on their website and in press releases through 6/30/20. And this is the first time we've ever had to be able to talk about CalPERS finances that are less than a year old. The actuarial value of the assets are up to 392 billion, but the liability has also jumped substantially to 556 billion. So the unfunded liability is jumping to 164 billion. And as those of us senior board members know, we've been paying unfunded liability payments along the way. We've already been making payments that are really pinching the district, yet the number just keeps rising. That's a very, very unfortunate situation. Yeah, there's the 6, 20, 30. Yeah, the assets grew 20 billion, but the liabilities grew 25 billion, and the unfunded liability grew 4.5 billion. So despite the payments, it keeps growing. So how did this get so large? And it's really simple. There's no connection between the money going in and the money coming out. The money going in is based on contribution rates for employers and employees set by law, and based on some actuarial factors like Elaine alluded to earlier about, number of years that they expect you to work, how long they expect you to live after you die, what the annual increase in the payroll will be, the attrition rate. There's a lot of complicated estimates that go into this, and clearly some of that has been wrong. But the real problem is there's just no linkage between one side or the other. And when you have political people determining what the benefits are going to be and what the input's going to be, they always tend to err on the part that's easiest. And as you can imagine, when you're depending on the fund to be fully funded to earn at the rate to go forward, the moment you start falling behind, it gets harder and harder to catch up because there's just plain old less money in the fund to invest. So when you're 70% funded like we are, instead of needing 7% to keep up, you actually need 10% to keep up because you're missing that extra 43% of the money. So expecting CalPERS to do 10% anywhere near routinely is, very unlikely, especially in today's interest rate. It's just the returns just aren't there anywhere near that close. So it could have been fixed along the way if they adjusted the adjustment forecast down a little more aggressively. They did adjust it down a full % over a few years from 8 to 7. It looked okay back when it was 8, that maybe 7 would do it, but with the interest rates falling where they are now, it wasn't anywhere near adequate. And increasing employer and employee rates is pretty limited. Our employer rates actually have gone up some. The employee rates have not, but it doesn't begin to keep up. And again, when you think back at that payroll number, there's just really no place you're going to get it out of payroll. There's just not enough dollars there for it to cover. So CalPERS came up with this new strategy, creating these unfunded liability loans to essentially transfer the responsibility for each year's failure for the fund to grow at the rate that it needs to grow to the agencies, and giving us 20 years to pay those. Now, we actually have 3 plans. We have 2.5 at 55, which is the plan for most of the employees from the time the district started to about 2007. And here's the data. This is pulled right out of the CalPERS report that they send to Leo. And the data shows that in 2018, the accrued liability was $21,151,000. And in 2019, the liability had grown to had actually dropped to 21,119,841. So maybe somebody dropped out. But the assets are not anywhere near that amount. And the unfunded liability, that down in number 4, went from $5.7 million in 18 to $6 million in 19. So those liabilities grew 291,000 in 1 year, and the assets only went up 27,000, despite a year they had 8.6% investment returns. This is the part that's so frustrating, because we look at that number and say, oh, great, investment returns are going to be okay. Well, there's so many other things going on as far as payouts that you don't necessarily get that. So the unfunded liability drew 264,000, and that we're making payments on that. And our funding ratio for that fund dropped from 70.4% to 69.5%. So one of the reasons that we're having the problem is the payroll is declining. And you say, well, why is the payroll declining? Well, we haven't had any new people in this fund since 2009, because we switched all new hires to the 2 at 60 plan, one of our other plans, in 2009. And then in 2013, Pepper changed the rules. All new hires are 2 at 62. So we actually have 3 plans. And this is the second one. This is the oldest one with the most members in it and the most liability. So when people retire, obviously they don't contribute anymore. So, you know, I liken this situation to a late stage Ponzi scheme when there's no more people jumping in the pool. But it's not actually structured like a Ponzi scheme. It's actually supposed to work. It's not supposed to be that way. But the reality is that there's fewer employees, so there's less employee contributions. And you can see the projected payroll for the year is dropping. So there's going to be less payroll contributions from both the district and the employees. So here's how it works out into the actual payments. Again, this is the CalPERS memo for the district on this particular plan. The percentage of projected payroll for the costs is going from 29% to 40%, because that's one of those impacts of more and more of the required employees on this plan retiring. So the total contributions that we'll be making are jumping from 41% to 52% of payroll. You know, that's a particularly big number, jumping from 440,000 to 463,000 in 1 year. Meanwhile, in the background, all of our retirees get a 2% per year cost of living adjustment, because that's part of the CalPERS contract. And that adjustment is given whether there's money there for it or not. It's part of the deal. It's what the system is set up to do. So those costs keep going up every year. So here's much better news. And this is our other two plans, our 2 at 60 and our 2 at 62 plan. Now for next year's budget, you have two ways to go. You can pay the amount due of your unfunded liability, or you can pay the whole thing off. So if you look at the 2 at 55 plan, the amount due is $463,829, which is what we can afford to do. We obviously don't have $6 million laying around, so we're not going to be able to pay it off. But the other two plans, the amount due, the amount to pay it off is only $30,000 and $22,000. So those two will be able to pay off. So the total amount to pay off those two plans and do the annual payment on the 2 at 55 will come up to $516,970. Now, the good news is that basically every employee hired from roughly 2009 on, their plan is in great shape and fully funded, and we're going to do our best to be able to keep it that way. And but the other plan is it's outside of responsibility. By the time this responsibility was handed to us, it was completely out of control. So yeah, here's a set of the unfunded liability payments for the last 5 years, and this is, you know, what they're going to be. And those are really big numbers, and I have a few slides to show you how the numbers actually work. Here's the 20-year loan repayment plan graphic that CalPERS puts on their website, and they really make it look pretty rosy. They make it look like it's not that hard. You got a 5-year ramp, and then 15 years of full payments. But the problem is the ramp is a lot steeper than the picture, and the way it works, you know, this slide is actually a timeline, and over to the very left of the screen there, you see the timeline of June 30, 2020. Okay, that's when the unfunded liability is calculated. You don't have to make payments for 2 years until it looks like my graphics have got out of whack here, but until 2022, you make the payment. And you can make the payment as we do, the whole payment at the beginning of the fiscal year, or you can make it in 10 monthly payments. But of course, they tack on 7% interest. And we're not big on paying 7% interest, so we do our best to manage our cash flow to be able to pay it off on the first of the year. But they show a 5-year ramp on the size of the payments, where the loan is essentially being negative amortized. And then in 2026 to 27, you'd face 15 full years of payments until the note was retired in 2041, 2042. So here's how the actual the payments would actually work for the fiscal year 1920 unfunded liability. The first year payment is a relatively easy $19,000, but it's 5 times that by the time we get to year 5. And that number will be stacked on top of all of the other unfunded liability payments that we're making until 2041, 2042. So to summarize, this is really relevant because, it's such a big hit on our budget and it's so confusing. And I hope I've made it clear, but I understand this is a complicated topic and it's hard to understand. And they make it hard to understand because they don't really want you to think about it. But 2 of our 3 plans are fully funded. The other plan needs 43% more in it to be fully funded. And at the 70% funding level, which is where they're at, it's going to take over 10% returns to keep it from growing. Before there's any actuarial changes, they decide that people are living longer, then the liabilities go up. But there is good news. As through 1st of January, CalPERS said that their investment returns were around 12.5%. The market, all the markets that they invest in have been doing slightly positively. It's been up and down the last week or so, but I'm guessing there may be a point or a point and a half better than that. And if they can hang on to that through June, then next year's unfunded liability news won't be so bad because we may not even have one for the 2 at 60 and the 2 at 62 plans. And we'll have a slightly lower number on the other plan. But that's the boat we're in, and we're going to be in this boat for a long time. Any questions?
Mark, would you explain the advantages or disadvantages if we would get a side loan for that unfunded liability?
Well, there's several ways to handle it. You can just prepay it, and go borrow the money any way you want. The problem with that is that number is a moving target. And what may be enough to borrow now to cover that could be we could be $1 million behind 2 years from now, even, and then have that to pay as well as the other. So a more common strategy that some cities are doing is they're creating an investment fund. They're setting money aside and investing it with the eye towards paying their future unfunded liability payments. That seems like me to be something similar to putting money in a savings account to pay off your credit card bill in 2 years. The interest on the credit card's way higher than what you're going to earn. And the sort of conservative investments that government agencies have to make really restrict the amount of returns you can get. And frankly, if you had the money to invest, why not just pay down a portion of that liability and you would instantly essentially save 7% on that money. So you could do that, but doing it with a loan in addition to it, it adds more financial risk to the agency. And that's why I don't think anyone's doing it. I also think there's some sense that at some point, something's going to break in this. Because if you were a city, for example, the city of Oxnard and the city of Ventura have their safety employees, their police and firemen in CalPERS at 3% plans. And their unfunded liability payments are multiples of our whole budget each year. They're staggering numbers. And these numbers are going to drag some municipalities to the ground, because when you have police and fire, you have really expensive plans. And fortunately, here in the city of Camarillo, they've contracted with the county, and the county has a much more responsibly read retirement plan, as Jordan could explain to you. It's much better funded and much better controlled, and in a much safer, more stable place. But the cities that chose CalPERS, and because the employees, they like the best benefits, and that certainly is the best benefits. The problem is not enough money has been put away. And as I showed you, the problem's 10 years old and there's no real serious attempt being made to do it. The closest thing to an attempt being to it is the unfunded liability plan, which is transferring the problem to someone else and making them be responsible for it. And at some point, that's going to break agencies too, because these kind of increases, we have very limited fiscal resources with no control of property tax income and very limited control of programming income, and we just can't keep taking hits like this.
Chair Malloy, I was going to ask the 20-year amortization layers and, for paying that off the unfunded liability. Do those for the 55, 2.5% at 55, when did we start doing the layers or the 20-year amortization? I mean, is that something that we can choose to do with CalPERS, or is that something that you have to do with CalPERS?
I believe they have an option for a 30-year plan, and which is even worse. I think they chose as the default the 20-year plan. But the 20-year plan is more than a 20-year plan because you make no payments for 2 years. I mean, imagine buying a car this way. The dealer says no car payments for 2 years, and then we'll make the payment $199 a month, and then in year 5 the payment's going to be $1,000 a month. Like, we'd all be driving Ferraris and we'd all be broke. It's impossible. It's an impossible proposal.
Do you know when they started that though? Because I know that just recently we paid off one of our amortization layers. I don't know if it's a 15 or a 20 year, but I know when those start falling off, it's pretty significant. When those start falling off and stuff, and we just had that from when we started it 15 or 20 years ago or so.
I just pulled the slide up. There's the years we started making payments. The 2017-18 fiscal year was the first payment.
Okay, so that was when the 20-year amortization or 20-year payments start. Okay, so basically 20 years from now, that's going to drop off. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, actually, 20 years from now, these numbers are going to be much bigger because keep in mind, these numbers are all at the front end of the schedule. These numbers are at the 20% of the total payment levels. So, they go up slowly. They don't go up to the full level until you've been at 5 years. So that 17-18 amount of 245, that one's much bigger now. And, it's going to keep getting much bigger because they keep layering on top. Each year you get a new one. They keep layering on top of each other. And
do we have those falling off? When is the first? Do you know the first year that we would have those layers falling off?
Well, the chart showed a July 2020 year end falling off at 40 in 2041, 42. So that would take 3 years out of that. So long past our 10 years here. But again, if they make adjustments every time, first of all, every time they make adjustments in the rules and change the output, then that helps. When they change any change to the actuarials, people start living shorter than they planned. That helps. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go on. And of course, having a windfall year, they have an 18% year. That's a big help. There's lots of potential things, but the reality that we're looking at right now is they're so far on. I mean, 70% is really low. It's really low.
I think one of the things too, Chair Malloy, to think about, and you didn't bring up, but back in the 80s when the rates were so high, CalPERS decided to give the agencies payment holidays. And yes. I believe PVRPD did not pay for 4 or 5 years. And so now it's come back to haunt us because we still have to go back and pay all of that. And as I recall,
with interest.
Paid for, with interest.
Yeah.
So, payment holidays are wonderful, but like you said, there's no payment for 2 years, and then all of a sudden we're jumping way up. So
The only thing I can see light at the end of the tunnel is that we are not adding any additional employees to that tier. And that's the only thing that I see as a plus, but it's not going to get any smaller, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's an ongoing expense that we have almost no ability to control. The city of Camarillo has much bigger UL payments than we do, but they don't have the police and fire department in CalPERS. They have only a very small amount of their staff in CalPERS, so it's much smaller, and the city is in very strong financial shape. So they're actually setting money aside and investing it and preparing to have it, for when they need it for CalPERS. That's a very conservative strategy. I would advocate for paying down the balance and saving that 7% cost, if it was possible. But a lot of cities are, the numbers are so big, they're now looking at taking on loan debt, and it's an extremely risky strategy. Every time you leverage yourself, you create risk.
Well, I think back to what CSDA does. CSDA, all their employees are covered by CalPERS also, but they started 5 years ago by paying off that unfunded liability in full, and it sure makes a difference when we pay it off every year. And we luckily have been able to pay it off every year. So. But
yeah, if you're 90% funded or 95% funded, it's not that difficult. I mean, you're essentially paying off the difference between the investment earnings and the 7% target. And when the fund is smaller, like our 2 at 60 and 2 at 62, because we haven't had them that long, they're going to have that many employees in them and not much payroll. The numbers are just smaller. The problem is this thing got out of hand when the district's plan was already mature and had a lot of employees in the plan and retired, and no one paid attention to the store, and obviously the pension holiday decision was a major mistake. But as we know, getting people to pay things when they're due is a lot harder than saying, oh, we'll deal with that tomorrow. So that's what's happened. So we're dealing with it. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I was wondering when you expect to start seeing kind of the benefits of PEPRA and the other, the additional plans that we've gone to since the 2.5% at 55.
Well, the PEPRA plan and the plan. See, when we raised the benefits to 2.5 at 55 in 2007, based on CalPERS set assurances, absolute assurances, and you know how I ask questions and how Bob asks questions, that an additional payroll deduction for the employees was going to cover the extra cost. That turned out to be cubic, not true. That's as polite as I can put it. So in 2009, the board saw that. We said, okay, that's enough. All new hires go in a 2 at 60 plan, which is what we'd had before. So we started a new plan and all new hires went on it. When PEPRA came in 2013, the state said, okay, all new hires are 2 at 62. The rates are actually very close to those two. It doesn't change that much for a 62 target versus 60 target. But the main thing is we kept on top of it all along and kept it fully funded and didn't let it get out. The same thing could have happened back in the 2000s if the pension holiday idea had been rejected for the dumb idea it was. They were fully funded back then. They're actually slightly over fully funded. If you look at the judges fund, it's comfortably overfunded. Completely different numbers when you look in the CalPERS report at the judges fund. So it's just how the decisions get made, and the legislature needs to step up and realize that the investment return rate is too high and that the amount of contributions need to be higher, or other than that, they're going to have to reduce benefits. And that's a very difficult thing to do because these are negotiated contracts and agreed to and promised to employees, and people's retirement rights are considered by the courts to be very difficult to attack. The only real way they get attacked is in bankruptcy. The two municipal agencies in California that went into bankruptcy came out of bankruptcy without impacting their employees' pension benefits. So there's not a lot of ways to do with it. It's just, there's as Lane said, we're no more people are going into this plan, and eventually the benefits will start dropping as the people drop off the plan. So.
How many retirees do we have right now? Do you know? I don't know if I caught that in the audit, or if I did, I don't remember. Retirees and active members in that 2.5% at 55.
I didn't see that on the report. Leo or Mary, could you weigh in on that? Do we have any data on that?
I'm here, Chairman Malloy. I don't have that readily available, but I can get it and email it out to the 5 of you. As far as how many active retirees we have on our books.
Would it also be helpful? Typically the evaluations come out in usually August or so. Would it be helpful if staff on an annual basis, probably like November, brought that report, give you a little bit more information as it relates to the valuations, kind of the minimum payments, what all that looks like? We'd be happy to do that if that's helpful for everybody.
I'd love to have
I like that
Christmas
idea.
Okay,
so
so
that is good. That is
Okay.
a good idea.
So what we can do is we can at least have Leo get the information out with retirees and what that looks like, and then when we get the newest evaluations, like I said, around August, September, what we can do is do a staff report, kind of put all this together, and then brief everybody in at the November board meeting, if that works for everybody.
I think that'd be great. Thank you.
You bet.
Mark, I have a question. The jurisdictions that you spoke about a little while ago that went into bankruptcy and then they came out and it didn't affect their employees' pensions, is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah, they didn't impact pension benefits.
Didn't their problem though just start all over again after that? With the unfunded liabilities, I mean, the next day it just started all over again, didn't it?
Well,
it was easier to handle because it was less.
Well, what they did is some bondholders got hurt in the reorganization plan, and that's how they essentially got themselves back on the balance beam, is by handing
somebody
over.
had to pay the price.
Right, they had to pay the price. And the cities both decided that, they needed their police and firemen, and they didn't want to lose a valuable part of their staff. And they were worried about losing them if they cut their benefits or were unable to make the payments on the benefits. So they committed to continue to do so and solve the problem, through different methods. But the bankruptcy courts have said that in these two cases, both judges said this is something you could look at as doing.
Seems to me that their ability to sell bonds might have been affected also.
Sure.
I think everybody's ability to sell bonds is affected because this was a new one. Governments don't normally go out of business. It's just they don't normally have the sort of fiscal problems that these sort of obligations had created for, I believe, is the city of Modesto and the city of San Bernardino.
It was actually,
they had other problems too. It's not fair to put it all on their CalPERS problems. They had other problems big time.
It was the city of Stockton.
Stockton, that's it.
It was the city of Stockton, and I believe it took them a good 3 to 5 years to actually rebound with some of that. They had to sell off a ton of properties and assets. I think Director Roberts, you'd asked about like a side fund. I know that we have, and we can make that part of the report and look into that. But part of the challenge is whether agencies will actually be able to, if we'd actually be able to get a bond or something to pay that down, because you don't have an asset. So that means that we would have to put up one of our parks or something for collateral for that. But we can bring more information as we bring all that back with the valuations. But that was one of the things when we had this conversation, or at least looking into it, knowing that the 5 million keeps going up and it's gone up to 6 million plus.
And Mary, just saying that I believe that was Director Magner who talked about the side fund.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for that correction.
That's okay. Just want to give credit where credit's due.
Oh, well, thank you. We
One more question.
on several occasions, so I just wanted it to be discussed again because I know what the answer is. So
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
There's, they have this COVID relief bill in Congress, and it's got a lot of money that is being going to be spent, and some of the money is not going to be spent for a couple of years. And of course, the talk is that some of the states, maybe ours, is going to be getting a large chunk of money. Is there any discussion that any of that money, if it in fact comes, would go in to help solve this problem?
Elaine could probably comment on that better than I could.
yeah, well, I don't know that much on the federal side, but I can find out, Director Kelly. I can get a poll and find out what he feels might be. He's our nation, the guy that handles it at the federal level. So let me find out for you, and I'll bring it back to the next meeting.
Because that could be very helpful if there was in fact this large chunk of money coming. But of course, it depends on how it's going to get spent.
Well, and keep in mind that all of the money that has been carved out in Sacramento, nothing has come to special districts. That's why we did that project back in December, January, to ask the county for money out of that CARES money. So once again, they left special districts out of the new one. So it's very difficult, even though that we have those two bills sitting up there that happen to be ready to, they've already been introduced, but for them to, we don't know what's going to happen with that. Is that going to be for future, or is that going to be for, past? I don't know. Did I lose everybody?
No.
I stopped sharing my screen, so the PowerPoint is gone.
I was going to say I've got a blank screen up here.
Yeah,
so.
it's a bigger, brighter you now, Elaine.
Oh, yes. Well, I can't see me. It says something about sales.
Okay, let's get back on track here. Standing committees liaison. There were no liaison meetings that I'm aware of. So long range planning.
We haven't had our meeting. It's next week.
Oh, next week. Okay, great. Thanks, Bev. Personnel.
We
I just lost Elaine.
There she is.
Oh, there she is.
Unmute. There you go.
We did not meet.
Okay. And as I mentioned previously in my comments, policy meeting was delayed. Ad hoc committees, pickleball, tennis.
Oh, Director Dransfeld and I had a very interesting ad hoc meeting for pickleball and tennis.
on February 24th. We had approximately 60 attendees, and the staff came up with some excellent out-of-the-box ideas. I have to commend staff. They came up with short-term, midterm, and long-term. And I'm going to let Mary talk about what the direction is, because it seems to get mixed up every time somebody talks about it. So I'm going to let Mary tell us exactly what the direction was that Director Dransfeld and I gave staff. And then the midterm will come to the board probably in April, because that will require board approval. And the long term hopefully will show up in May or April, May at the Capitol budget meeting. So like I said, staff did a great job. And let me tell you, the people who spoke, this is the first time we'd used this forum, and it worked out really well, I thought. So Director Dransfeld, you have input?
I really thought there was great participation from the audience. It seemed as though they were understanding and very appreciative of all the options presented and felt heard, which I think is just so important. You know, I think one thing just to bring up from it, one problem that was recurring was that there's supposedly bandit tennis instructors. So for us to just be aware of that, because it's impacting both the tennis players and pickleball players being able to use the court.
Mary, it's your help us please with direction.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I even copied and pasted Mary's next steps.
Feel free if you'd like to go, and I can fill in.
So one of the first steps, which seemed to be an easy quick fix, is the pilot program rule changes at Bob Kildee Park. This would include primetime hours, which came as feedback from the hearing, the public hearing that was held in November, and usage of the cage courts during prime hours. And staff is working on signage that should be up in about 2 to 3 weeks. Staff will take to the full board the proposals for one multi-use court at Pitts Ranch and one at Springville. So this will be up to the board on April 7th. And then there's the discussion with the full board of a long-term project at Freedom Park, specifically in the pool area. And lastly, reaching out to the developer for Rancho Springville development about the new park and seeing if we can add lights so that we have lighted courts, because that seemed to be a main issue, is people playing longer into the night. Mary, anything to add?
Mary?
Gotcha.
I'm looking at you, Mary.
I gotcha. So a couple other things that we, just to kind of reiterate, I can't speak tonight, but we'll also have for the April board meeting. So for the April board meeting, you will see some of the short-term / midterms come back before you. And we'll kind of walk through what all of that looked like, but just to kind of make sure the board, because there's a couple of things that we talked about that we'll have to probably discuss a little bit further, were potential start times for pickleball. I think one of the things that we've heard from the neighbors is it's loud and what that looks like. So we'll be making some potential suggestions that will come back from neighbors that we heard. The other thing that we will continue to look at is if there's other potential options, but as Director Dransfeld said, a couple of things immediately will be the rule changes for a pilot program at Kildee, and that will be running for a 9-month period of time. What we'll do is we'll get feedback after 6 months. So that way, what we don't do is change it for a day. Somebody has an objection to it, and then you're changing, so you don't know what works. So we'll evaluate it for the first 6 months, see if we need to make changes, and then do another 3 months and see if that needs to be a permanent. And then we'll bring that before the board at that point. And as she said, we'll be coming before the board in April for the 2 courts, one potentially at Pitts and the other one potentially at Springville. So what we will be doing at those courts is actually putting up signage at those courts so people know that there's a potential multi-use court change. So that way, if there are, if we have neighbors or other people, that people know that it's a change and a potential change. So that way we don't hear from people afterwards. It's like, I had no idea. So all of that should be going up. That signage for those courts should be going up probably in the next week or so. The multi-use court, or the change at the hours at Bob Kildee, should be about a week or so as well. So right now, we're just finalizing verbiage, making sure we can get the appropriate signage. So those were kind of the key points, and we'll bring back the rest for the full board at the April 7th meeting.
I think one of the important things that we need to think about is, with COVID changing and possibly people going back to work and things, that could have an impact on usage. And with us going into these pilot program, I think that will give us that period of 6 to 9 months to see what's going to work and what isn't going to work. We can get feedback from the community and the players. And I think what we need to also stress, that we need to make sure that the tennis players understand when the discussion is pickleball, even though it doesn't say pickleball tennis, that's going to probably impact them. So they just need to understand that when they see pickleball up there, they need to pay attention too. So, something got inadvertently left off. It wasn't intentional, but please keep in mind, it's pickleball tennis. It impacts the same courts. So
moving forward, Mary, though, we're going to be including pickleball tennis.
Yeah. So moving forward, all the verbiage will say pickleball and tennis. So so people don't think it's just one or the other. So we will be doing that moving forward.
Very good. It was a very productive meeting, Chair Malloy, because with having 60 people and so many of them spoke, and I think it worked out well.
Yeah, it ran very smoothly. I was pleasantly surprised.
Mary, I have a question. Director Dransfield used the term bandit. Are these like private I think it's like, she must mean private trainers for a fee?
Yes. So what's been happening on some of the courts is you'll have people, just like it sounds, people will show up, do tennis lessons. They aren't reserved because most of our tennis courts are first come, first serve. Mm-hmm. So the challenge is somebody goes to play and somebody else hasn't reserved it and they're teaching lessons and they haven't reserved it. They shouldn't be doing that. Anybody that's making money on our courts needs to do a rental. So that was one of the concerns that we had from some of the tennis players. And probably more specifically at Valley Lindo, and then the cage court at Kildee. So we'll get to at least at Kildee, being that we have one of the things that's in there is we have prime hours, and the prime hours at Kildee on that court for pickleball are from 8 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. and then from 5 until 8 p.m. So that means that tennis, if there's an overflow of tennis, pickleball actually has first priority on that court. So that will probably help stop a little bit of the bandit at that facility. And it's just a matter of, trying to find them and when they pop up at the other facility.
Why don't we have signs at these facilities that just tell people you have to get a permit to make money off of our courts?
That's something that we could potentially do.
Because right now what's happening is, aren't they calling security and having security go over there and deal with the problem and all of that? I know it happens at Pitt's Ranch all the time. I mean, there's more private trainers out there. They're making more money than we are. And so it would just seem to me, even if only a few people, read the sign and obeyed it, it would be a few less trips by our security out there to have to deal with seems like a minor problem, but people who have a reservation, it's not a minor problem.
We can look at that.
Okay.
Then, Mary, I was also wondering if that's something we could maybe consider integrating into the new software that we're trying to replace ActiveNet with. I don't know if it'd be possible to set up some sort of reservation system through either an app or online for the courts, but that might be a way of mitigating that for folks, whether it's casual use or for for instruction as well.
We can look, and when we're doing, and Anthony, I think if you're on the line, he's been doing most of the work on that. Is that, Anthony, something that we can work on to be able to do?
It's since the, well, we actually are going to have proposals come back here, well, in 2 days. An ideal situation would probably be setting up the facilities as a reservable facility. I believe ActiveNet can do something very similar to that currently. But going forward, since we probably be starting fresh with whatever we end up going with, we'd have to probably build the facility from scratch to be able to do that. So ideally, they can all do it, but we'll find out which ones are more capable of doing it during their proposal evaluation.
Thanks.
I'm not sure that an online system is really superior to, are you there? Okay, you're there. You get in line. It's your turn next. Because when you have an online system, you give people with electronic access the ability to create reservations that they may or may not use, and then we have courts going empty and people going, "Oh, I can't ever play because the reservations are all gone." I mean,
Well, that was part of.
There's something to be said for just being there and showing up to use it and taking your turn to use it. And when it takes too long to take a turn, then fewer people show up. I mean, there's a lot of advantage to that. However, the scheduled classes certainly, if we're going to have an instructor where you're paying the district to take lessons, obviously that needs to be filtered in, because those people have to be able to use the courts when they're scheduled. But to just have all use of it, especially with pickleball where you've got 4 players on a court, I mean, it's unimaginable that you could schedule such a thing. It works much better the way it is now, where people show up and the people that there isn't court space for wait in line, and when there's an opening, the next one jumps on it. It all seems to work pretty good. But I like your idea of the scheduled prime time, and this court's for this sport during this time. I think that'll save some of the arguments.
Yeah, I think it'll help.
Yeah, super. I look forward to hearing this at the next board, having some solid proposals. The next board meeting. This is great.
Well, I think you will be pleasantly surprised. The staff really, really did think outside the box. So they did a lot of effort for it.
Thank you. Okay, foundation.
We met. We had a good meeting. We did some discussion on fundraising, and we did not schedule another meeting at that time, but we will start regular meetings. And as I said previously, we are losing one of our charter members, our treasurer. Rod is and Linda are moving to Utah to be closer to home. So he and her will be greatly missed, because they are such great volunteers for us with the foundation. So we'll be making a decision on a treasurer at the next meeting, and I will let you know when the next meeting is, because we're going to get with everybody to see when everybody was available, because we're going to change the meeting date.
Great.
Oh,
thank you, Elaine.
We did talk about fundraising, having something in the fall. So it will be coming.
Excellent. Excellent. When we've had the party for the parks the last few years, and it was a great fundraiser, Pleasant Valley Historical Society is doing a barbecue, and they're doing it monthly, and you drive up and you grab your barbecue and you drive off and you eat it at home, and it's become very popular. And Bruce Yoakams has done a great job for them on the barbecue side, and it kind of making it a habit. A lots of us need to go out and get food a lot anyway. And what a great opportunity to sort of get people in the habit of thinking about us, and in this case, thinking about the museum. That's a great idea. I would be happy to take credit for stealing it. So, Mary, you're up. General Manager's report.
Okay, we'll start with the COVID. Is once again, is everybody seeing their things are changing, and good news is they're changing for the better. We are currently and still remain in the purple tier, but from last week when we were at 16.9, it's gone down to 10.8. So we are slowly inching down toward red. So as we continue to go down in that direction, we'll be continuing to open more and more opportunities. So as we, just to kind of give everybody a heads up, as we start to go into the red tiers, we'll start to bring back like some of the classes, puppy classes, gymnastics, kinder music, bingo, some of those things. We are looking at, now that youth sports has been able to open, so youth sports can now open for games. Tournaments aren't open yet, but at least games are. So we'll be also looking at adult softball, kickball, and those kinds of things. One of the other things, want to make sure everybody is still remind people that we still have the aquatic center and swim lessons that are still available. So starting a new session, we currently have 49 signups, and the information can be found online at our website at pvrpd.org or by calling 987-8198. Coming up, I know that we can't do Easter extravaganza as we've done in the past, but Easter extravaganza this year will be Monday, March 29th through Sunday, April 4th. And what that will entail is you can join our modified extravaganza and take part in the district-wide Easter egg hunt. We've hidden 9 giant Easter eggs in 9 different parks around Camarillo. So you can actually go on to, once again, pvrpd.org/extravaganza, and you can see where the eggs will be hidden and get that specific information. So it's a way that we can still do some stuff. We've got a lot of community partners. I know Caitlin has been working with those. We've got different organizations, and we'll get you more information at the next meeting, and all the organizations that have taken part. So on the park side of it, as Chairman Malloy said, we are in the midst of Springville Dog Park. We want to reach out and thank Friends of Camarillo Dog Park. They will be paying for the structure that will be going up, the pergola up on the north side. They have also will be paying for some of the amenities and a new bench that will be going up. So they'll be spending a little over $13,000 at that park to help with the stuff that we're doing. So a big thanks to them as always for helping us with the dog parks. Charter Oak, we are just about done with Charter Oak, removing all the trees and pruning them. Next step will be to be putting more trees in. So we're in the midst or almost done with that particular project. The community center kitchen, right now we're hoping to bring that to the board in April, but right now we're waiting on county planning. So once they get it, it's a 20-day turnaround. So we are waiting on them to get information back. I know we've had to provide a ton of information regarding, what kind of food will be served, what days, and all of that kind of stuff. So looking forward to getting that information back. In our Neal Ranch, same thing. That right now we're almost done, or Lacey's almost done getting that ready to go out to bid. Waiting, we just sent that, or she's in the process, hopefully by the end of this week, sending it over to the city and hopefully being able to get that back. So once again, we can get those things moving forward. So other items, I think, as Director Magner had said, I spent some time on a legislative call last week with the California Parks Association. And right now they're kind of looking at their set of bills and potentially what might affect us on the park, just from a park district standpoint. So they're looking at a slew of bills, and I'll get all of that stuff. Right now, they're just putting those top priorities together. So I will get that information out as that information becomes a little bit more solidified. So With that, I think that was all the information I have for you today.
Thank you, Mary. That gets us to item 9, oral communications from the board members. Who'd like to go first?
I'll go first. I have a question for Mary. Sorry, but I know you just went off.
No,
camera.
that's fine. Yeah.
One of them, so I know with Charter Oaks, were there any other additional trees that fell within this past, like the wind gusts?
Yeah, that when was it? And Bob, I'm going to have you jump in here in a second. Not this past week, but probably, what was it, the one 2 or 3 weeks ago? We did have a major tree that went down. We were fortunate it didn't hit the house. It did do damage to the fence, the parts of the pool.
Okay, I saw that one. Yeah.
So that one was the last one that has gone down. But we've been fortunate in this past wind that we didn't have any that went down. So hopefully we've taken the worst trees out, pruned those up, and we just kind of keep our fingers crossed each year that we don't have anything that hits anybody. But is that correct, Bob?
Yes, ma'am.
And then any updates on food share? I know it sounds like a broken record every time I'm asking about.
No, I can appreciate that. So the struggle that we're having, and I think this kind of goes back and forth, is that I know that food share, there's some questions I had with the agreement with food share. But our biggest challenge is trying to get other partners on board with this, because the way that it sits right now is that if we're the only agency, we would have to commit pretty much 4 staff every Thursday and or Friday, and that's just to do food pickup and delivery. And that doesn't count anything as far as getting food back. So I know staff is working to find out if there's other agencies that are willing to partner with us to be able to pick up the food and such. Because trying to take 4 staff out for about 4 hours on a Thursday, every single Thursday, is going to be a challenge that once we get back up and going, I don't know that we're going to be able to make that commitment every single week. So
can we have volunteers do help with any of that?
And that's actually kind of what we're working on, is to find out what group of volunteers, if there's different church groups or other agencies. I know that we've reached out to some, and I'll have Eric, if there's something that I'm misspeaking on right now, Eric. But I think the challenge is trying to figure out, do we have one group that can do it like maybe a month, or the first Friday of the month? Do we have another group? Because what we're seeing is same thing, is if we're asking one group to do it every single week, it's really hard for one group to commit to 52 weeks to pick it up. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to kind of weed out. But as soon as we can kind of work and get groups to kind of commit, then we'll be looking at it's easier for us to pick up if we have one group once in a while that misses, opposed to every single week. So that's where we're at with that. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, thank you. And just for oral communications, I went out and visited Freedom, Springville, and Charter Oaks. And just a comment on Springville, I know that when we were looking at the photos, there was more deterioration than there was before, since there wasn't an annual maintenance. And I just think whenever we're shutting down a park for maintenance, if we just have a routine schedule or calendar where we can say, so that we're not upsetting the public, they know, okay, during these days, or like every March, this park will be closed down for maintenance from, for XYZ. And then it's just something that we build on in the futures for any yearly maintenance that's needed. And then I did see the site with Charter Oaks, the tree that had fallen into the pool. It was just, the magnitude of these trees is just crazy. And so I understand the neighbors' points of view. I mean, it's a safety concern, but then I also understand the community concern of, these beautiful trees, but it was really heartbreaking to see that. And then on PV Fields, the Brightview contract, it was interesting that Mr. Johnston called in today because it was something I've been thinking about. And I know Director Kelly, you had mentioned there being a management oversight concern. And so I was thinking about, how can we help resolve this? And, with all the other contracts that we have, I think it would be very helpful if there was some sort of oversight position with that basically checked in with each agency on a weekly basis to discuss any concerns, changes that need to happen, so that all these problems don't just start to build on one another and the issue actually worsens. And so we can basically address them as soon as they're happening. And then it would be helpful if we did look into racial bias training within PVRPD and that plans for equitable access be implemented. I've seen a presentation from Daniel with Anti-Defamation League. It was very helpful. And he would be a good resource to connect with if this is something the board decides to explore further. I think it would be very beneficial for all of us. And then this is probably another question for Mary, is for the goals meeting, when can we expect the follow-up from that?
Let me see if I can. The goal is for the board to see something at the April board meeting. So what we've been doing is actually, just to give you a quick update on that, thanks for asking, working with staff. So the 5 goals that kind of came out from the board is working with staff to kind of get input, figure out what that looks like. And then what we'll have is something that's solidified that the board can look at, give input, and then get back to us. I think you had, let me, real quick, Director Dransfeld. So right now with the new contract, one of the things they have to do with getting their, 2 things they have to do is they have to give us a weekly update with the information, and they have to give us a monthly. So one of the things that we will be doing is Brandon and Bob will oversee that. Brandon will be meeting with them on a weekly basis, as well as getting specific information as to what they are working on and getting photos so we can see specifically.
Awesome.
And what will happen is they don't get paid unless we see that. So trying to put more of those controls in place. So just as an FYI.
Oh, that's really good to know. But that's only for Brightview, correct?
That is for Brightview, but I know for the other, Nick works with the other ones. So one of the things that I've asked Nick is to, once again, on a monthly basis, to put something together so at least we can see, and if there are concerns that start to pop up, so we can see what those concerns are, to see if it's actually the contractor or if it's our staff, so we can kind of work through that.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know.
You bet.
Let me address the annual maintenance issue you brought up.
Sure.
The only park that gets annual maintenance is PV Fields
Okay.
because the nature of the intense use. The dog park, we actually haven't had to do anything for a couple of years because when it rains normally, grass grows so much better.
Yeah.
I mean, all the golf courses now just look punished because we've had so little rain, 20% of normal. At the beginning of March is just way, all-time low sort of thing. And I've had explained to me a number of reasons why rainwater is so much more impactful. It comes down more evenly and it doesn't run off as much, and it tends to go deeper than irrigated water, and it doesn't have chemicals. But the reality is, natural rain is just like magic for living things. If you're into plants at all, that it's just like nothing like rain to make a plant just spark up and get really healthy. And this year we got hit from both ends. We had no rain, and we had a huge increase in use because of the pandemic. You have so many people that are home and have more time to walk the dog and have more time to go to the dog park. Last year, after we put the decomposed granite track around the edge, that relieved so much traffic, we actually were able to get through without having to do any renovations. But we didn't make it this year, and it's a combination of the high traffic and all that. We don't like to shut parks down. That's like the thing that, that we really, that's why it's a board, it takes a board policy to do it, a board agreement to do it. The staff doesn't just shut down parks. We have to really be sure that it's what's needed because they're there. And in that particular case, you know, we've in both cases we did it. We created one out at Freedom Park, and it's worked out pretty well. You know, everybody owns a car and taking the dog in the car, so you know it's worked out for the short term and gives a chance for the new sod to take root and have a chance because it's under some pretty intense living conditions with dogs and people stomping on it and all that sort of stuff. Even though we have a really big park and there's lots of space to hang out, you know, there's certain areas that's where the people hang out just because that's what they want to do. They're not in the grass growing business. That's our problem. But we definitely don't like to have to do this annually, but we do it when it's necessary. I have a friend who works for, let's just say, another park and rec district in Ventura County, and we sort of tease each other back and forth about how they let their parks run absolutely to dirt. And, you know, we don't allow that because we have standards that we uphold, that we want to keep things nice, and we're not afraid to close something and make it right to get it back to the standards that people expect. So, but it's definitely not an annual thing.
Got it.
And we do post notices out there beforehand that it's coming.
Yeah.
And the users are used to it now, and they all appreciate it because they've been to other dog parks, and they like can't believe how do you keep this so nice, because most dog parks end up just being dirt. So, Jordan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Mary, I was just going to ask about if there's been any other communications from the county about needs for vaccine side. I know they opened up one at the Office of Education here, and I would assume that might fulfill Cambria's needs, but I was just going to check in on that one.
They have not reached back out regarding a vaccine site. They did say that if they did need something, they would reach back out to us if they needed to fulfill more. So we send them an email every once in a while to see if they still are in need.
Great, thank you. And then I was also going to ask about if there was a amicable kind of conclusion or resolution to the issue of the families or the kids that were kicked out of the park, that issue that we received email on.
Sure. I actually followed up with the constituent. I think it's probably been at least a week or so ago. So we had a conversation. I think her main concern was the approach that our ranger took. After I had a conversation with her, I don't think she realized that games were not allowed. So kind of walk through the scenario, what needed to happen, what the standards and specifically. So I think everybody at this point understands. Told her we'd have a conversation with rangers and just approaches. And I think that, as I told her, I think everybody's just getting a little bit of COVID fatigue. So hopefully some of that will, as numbers get better, as we're seeing, that will relax a bit. So we don't have to go out and patrol games and such.
Yeah, that's hopeful for us. I'm assuming that's kind of the direction we're heading right now. So thank you for contacting her and resolving that. And I think that seemed like it a good resolution to the situation. And I was also just going to say that Bev, I believe I've also had a presentation from the ADL that I thought was pretty good as well. So if we are considering any board education or presentations or anything like that, I would second or support the ADL as well. And I just want to reiterate the importance of the equity, and that's it. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Jordan. Director Magner.
I just wanted to ask Mary, where are we at with the contract for testing at Freedom? Is that coming to an end, or did they extend that?
They have extended it through mid-March, but I also know that not mid-March, mid-May, but the number of testing, I had received an email the other day, the number of tests that are taking place have gone down exponentially, and that's throughout the county. I think at one point they were doing about 44,000 I saw, and right now they're doing only about 15,000. So really they're mostly only taking in front of the Freedom Center. But there has been some discussion, and I'm actually on an email trying to figure out, they may be looking at even downsizing that a little bit. So I'm still working through that, but they do know that they can't have all of that area down on Willis Drive once baseball starts. But I don't see tournaments coming back before May 15th. So it's literally, some of the games and stuff. So we're still working through some of that as we go.
Yeah, because when I went to be tested the other day, the guy told me that they would probably be even shortening the hours out there. So that's why I asked. So, and I know with games starting probably the 27th of March, why because I know they couldn't get to the equipment to get the equipment room, or couldn't get to the equipment room to get the equipment out very easily. So even though that's been done, we're in good shape. So, but I'm glad we're going to see the kids on the fields. I don't know if soccer's going to run a spring thing or not, but Camarillo and they can be so lucky that we're going to let them back on the fields, because there are a lot of areas that youth sports play on the city and school fields, and they're not going to let them play. Ventura City is not allowing any spring youth sports at all. And Oxnard is the same way. So I feel real bad for the kids in those areas.
We are actually, just a follow-up comment on that. We have sent information out to our community service groups regarding what they need to do. So we finally, I think it was Friday, late afternoon, early evening, got information from Capri based on the new guidelines. Because remember, even though they're opening and letting people play games, there's still certain things depending on which tier they're in. There are other things that they have to do. So we sent that information out, got information back from Capri. So what will have to happen is all the community service groups that choose to play that are in that will have to submit a letter to the districts, pretty much saying that they will follow all state and county guidelines, and then give us a copy of whatever their waiver is going to look like. So those are two of the key pieces. We're not asking for every single waiver from a kid. That is up to their organizations to get that. But to cover us, Capri did say that we need a letter from each of them saying that they will be following all state and county guidelines. So soccer, I know we've gotten requests from soccer, softball, baseball, all four of them, are looking at doing spring seasons, which will be good to see kids back out and moving again. So,
well, what my point is if Oxnard and Ventura are not allowing people on the fields, I think Camarillo is going to see an influx at our parks.
well, and that could be, I think once the sports groups gets going, there's probably going to be limited space, and where, outside groups are going to actually be able to participate. But that's something we will continue to keep an eye on. I know that any group that has been with us, whether they're community service groups or rentals, have all had to follow those same guidelines. So anybody that's going to rent from us, that we would expect that would be true. So if we do have road groups that are playing, that would be, once again, where the Rangers would ask. So we do and would need to be permitted. So if we do see those would be something that we would address. Kind of like, as Director Dransfeld said, the bandits out there, those will be still things that we'll have to address.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything?
That's it.
Thank you, Elaine. Director Kelly.
Just have one little thing. When this COVID thing first started, I always wanted to hear stories from like real people and not the talking heads on the news. There was so much misinformation that I didn't really trust it. And I remember it was a long time before finally somebody came on television that actually had it and could tell us what it was like to have it. And so I really went for a long time without knowing anybody that actually had it. And recently, I have a friend, and he told me an interesting story, which maybe it isn't even interesting, but I thought it was, because I thought something completely different. In any event, he's a school teacher, and they get random tested on a regular basis, I think like once a week. And so he gets tested, and lo and behold, it comes out positive. Well, he, of course, does not know when he actually got it. It could have been 2 days before, a day before, 3 days before, what have you. But in any event, that's not really the important part, although it is kind of important. From that day forward, it was 8 days before he had a single symptom. So if you add in a little bit of an incubation period from when it was as long as 10 days. And I thought that was remarkable for it to take that long. And at first he was talking, and we were doing Zooms and so forth, and I'm fine, this is nothing, you know, I'm good. And then all of a sudden he ended up in the hospital in a day. Everyone out there just needs to understand this thing is like wildly different for different people. And this guy's a healthy guy too. He is, you know, doesn't have a lot of comorbidities or anything like that, but it took him down. And that was, he was considered okay about 3 weeks ago. And he still has like, can't smell anything, still has a hard time breathing. He gets tired on a regular basis. Can't go that long. And so I know we're coming into a period of time when it looks like we're over the hump and we're on a downhill slope. But this thing, everybody still needs to pay attention. That's all I can say. You do not want, I mean, I've heard the stories, and I also now have had another friend who had a significant bout of it. And they've both told me what it was like on a, blow by blow basis. You do not want to get it. You just don't. These guys are over 40, so it might be different for them than a 25-year-old kid or something, but I'll tell you, everybody needs to keep their guard up until we are absolutely certain that we're free. That's all I got to say.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.